Maggie Bozeman and Julia Wilder were two respected longtime community organizers in Carlton, Alabama. Both black women were convicted of falsifying the signatures of illiterate or elderly blacks, for which they both proclaimed their innocence. A Pickens County judge gave Mrs. Bozeman and Mrs. Wilder 4 and 5-year prison sentences, respectively. It was Joe Lowery, as president of SCLC, that led a 160-mile march from Carlton to Montgomery to bring attention to their convictions and attacks on black voting rights. The march was extended from Alabama to Washington, D.C. to extend the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Along the way, public hearings on voting rights and registrations were held from state to state. The testimony generated from those hearings were delivered to the Congressional Black Caucus and Senator Ted Kennedy, who entered the testimony into the U.S. Congressional Record. By the way, these unsung heroes, Maggie and Julia, spent 11 days in prison and 10 months in a work release center before being paroled. Joseph Lowery never left the battlefield for his Lord. Voter registration and participation are consistent priority. Joe Lowery is responsible and is one of the few that can claim that responsibility, that was there in the beginning to get voting rights and made sure it was continually extended and kept the King movement, the movement that produced voting rights, alive. That's one of many reasons his engagement is historic and instructive for these times. Thank you, and may the Lowery Institute continue to train those that want to see change and train them to be change agents and scholar activists in the name of Joseph and Evelyn Lowery, another 20 years.
35 years ago, when we marched across this bridge and toward Montgomery, George Wallace came to greet and beat us. 5 years ago, when I led the 30-year reenactment from Selma to Montgomery, George Wallace met us at St. Jude's to greet and confess that he was wrong in 1965. And one of the reasons George Wallace did that was because thousands and millions of people like you have gone to the polls to vote. And you brought into office people with sensitivity. And it's because you have voted and made it possible. So we came here today not only to commemorate, we came to send a message to all those people who want to redefine this country in their own image. We got a message for them. We ain't going back, we just going forward. Ain't gonna be no back. We gotta send a message that the criminal justice system, that same mentality that beat us in 1965 is still alive today. It's alive in New York, where they killed Diallo. It's alive in California, where they've indicted police officers for framing black people and Hispanic people. It's alive in Louisville, Kentucky, where they're marching right now in protest of police killing an unarmed man. So we send a message today that we're going to be counted. And let me say this as I take my seat. Don't let anybody keep you from being counted, because if you don't be counted, you ain't going to count.